Okay, well, welcome to the Inviting Shift Show. I'm Christina Smith and I'm the host, and this is on currently Tuesdays and Saturdays, but this Thursday we're also going to have a show at 1. We have intermittent in between shows because there's so many people that want to share ahas that I couldn't fit them all into the schedule. So exciting tonight is that I used to really focus on health, so this tonight's talk is really going to hit home for me because there's so many times where people are wondering, like I'm doing all the things that my nutritionist is telling me to do. Why am I not feeling like I'm rocking the world and all of that? And Amanda Richardson is going to talk to us. Amanda has a PhD and she's very knowledgeable about these things. So it's not like, somebody who is a fly-by-night kind of coach. She's very knowledgeable about having a whole life health. And she's going to tell us about her aha and how she got there. So Amanda, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, should I just jump into my aha or tell?
Yeah, I mean, if it works, which way works better for you? Does the story fall into who you are now? I'm sure it does.
It does. So yeah, I'm going to start way back when I was about 13 years old, because my aha was not an overnight aha. It was sort of an evolution. When I was about 13, I had a little bit of a rough childhood. My parents got divorced and the kids were separated. I went to Hawaii with my mother, and my brother and my sister stayed in Michigan with my father. And we were separated. I was in this new state, totally alone, with a different group of friends, a totally different community, and just a different feel to the place. And I actually fell into a bit of a depression. I was unhappy, and in a lot of ways, I felt like I had sort of given up. And it was interesting because I had a dream at around this time where I was under a bed and someone came in with a vacuum and just sort of sucked like my soul out. And in my dream, I actually said, "This is just a terrible way to die." And not long after that, I was going up a flight of stairs at 14. I was 90 pounds or so. I was very small, and I could not make it up the flight of stairs. I was so tired. I just had to stop and take a breath. And I looked at my hands, and as you know, when you press your hands, there's a little bit of red in your fingertips, and when you press it, it turns white, and then the red returns. It's, your blood. And at that time when I did that, there's no red in my fingertips. There was no returning to red after being white. It was just completely white. And so we ended up going to the doctor. And very shortly after going to the doctor, I was diagnosed with something called aplastic anemia, which is where your bone marrow shuts down and stops producing blood. They had no idea how I got this disease. It's a rare disease. It's potentially fatal. And the prognosis for me was not good. I was in and out of the hospital. I had a lot of blood transfusions. I had so many that they actually implanted a catheter in my chest to have like a constant infusion of blood. And they were sort of racking their brains like, were you exposed to a toxin? Do you have something in your history? Because so many of us, and me at the time, thought you have a disease and there's a reason, a physical reason, exposure to a toxin, something about your genetics where there's an abnormality, or, a viral or bacterial infection. And that was sort of what they were landing on, but they still couldn't figure out why. But I, at that point, began already to see the connection between what was happening in my head, which was this sort of depression and this complete emptiness, and what was happening in my body, which was that my body gave out. And I suddenly got better after about a year or so. And I think the recovery, it was very unexpected, but I think a lot of it had to do with actually a shift in my emotions, because the physical disease was always very tied to my emotions. And so that was sort of an experience that kept with me as I was younger. Later on, because I was sort of around a lot of family members that had illness besides myself and witnessed illness and death at a sort of very young age, I ended up going into health. And like a lot of, young college students, what I wanted to do was cure cancer or cure a major disease. And what do? You go into molecular biology, where you study cells and you take apart systems. You look very carefully to see what's happening at that sort of molecular level. And I realized at the time, I just felt like there was so much more. We don't exist in this vacuum. We're not just a bunch of parts. I felt like I really wanted to broaden my perspective. So I ended up going to public health, and I was taking sort of my personal experience with me, where I started to think, this is more about what's going on in our cells. It's more about what we're being exposed to. It's, what's going on in our emotions, what's going on in our relationships, whether we feel safe in our community. And a lot of public health research, is a statistical modeling where you're kind of looking at, here's a risk factor for a disease, and, what promotes a disease or what helps people get over a disease. And when you start putting all these different things into the model, you realize so much of our life contributes to our health. So it sort of just started to all dawn on me as I moved along in my professional career that we are not just like a sum of parts. We are this whole person, and health is a whole body thing, but also whole life. It's relationships, it's community, it's spirituality. All of this converges together into this real tangled mess, which is sort of why I ended up going into coaching, because I realized even looking at it from this sort of broad population perspective, I wasn't getting at what's happening to an individual. We're all different. We all have these different circumstances, different bodies, different histories, different emotions. And I really wanted to hone in on, what's going on with each person, because that's how I think we'll figure out sort of how to be most healthy, is when we really take it at a personal level.
Wow. Yeah. And I completely agree. I mean, I know that there's a lot of people when I focus on health coaching, or they come to me because their health, we can change the food and we can change the exercise. Mm-hmm. But, if you're in a bad relationship, mm-hmm. or you really hate what you do every day, mm-hmm. I mean, it's really hard to lose weight or feel good even when you do. So it's like one of those things that they tell you, if you win the lottery, yeah, that might solve your financial problems. But if you weren't happy before, you're not going to be happy with a pile of money. I mean, for short term, you might be, but they say that your happiness level like returns right to where it is. So I completely agree. And I mean, there's some things that I just don't think that they can measure properly, like your spirit, like your, that it factor, I think is so important. There was a woman, and I'm going to forget her name. Her first name is Amy, mm-hmm. and she graduated from my high school, and she had no legs her entire life. She had, prosthesis, but she was just born that way. Mm-hmm. And her doctor, apologized to the parents and said, I'm sorry. She's probably never going to walk, all of those things. And she became a runner for Georgetown University. Wow. And then a model and an actress. Wow. And, and it was like, you can't measure that it factor, mm-hmm. You can't measure that human spirit. Mm-hmm. And, it's that synergy of all the parts, and it's much more than that. So I love that you say that. And, with all the studies that you have, it's amazing to come to that, because I know a lot of academics that would go through all that and then feel the need to like fight and defend all of that science, mm-hmm. rather than, staying open and going, well, is there more? Yeah. Is there more?
Yeah. So, I mean, that was one of the reasons I'm hearing an echo. I hope it goes away. But that was one of the reasons I left academia, is because they kept asking me to like niche down, focus more and more into like this one little tiny thing. And I kept coming back to this realization that I can't do that. I need to focus on this whole person, because I know, you talk to someone, and to take the weight issue, talk to someone who might say, all they want is to lose weight. And really, you dig deeper and it's something totally different. They feel guilty about something. They, have an unresolved issue in their past that they haven't dealt with. They feel like they don't deserve something. They're hiding. There's all these other issues, which, then turns the conversation from, let's just, and implement a diet and a fitness program, to let's deal with this underlying issue of how you feel about yourself, why you don't feel like you deserve to be, thinner, or why you are hiding. Who are you hiding from? What are you hiding from? And to me, it's like an upstream. In public health, they talk about upstream versus downstream. And, if there's a poison in the water, you can keep trying to fish out the poison downstream. But if you don't get upstream and figure out like where the poison's coming from, it's just going to keep floating down, and you're just going to keep trying to, take it out of the water downstream. So it's just about getting to the heart of the issue. And a lot of times the heart of our physical issues has nothing to do with our physicality. It's, we're in a crappy relationship, or we weren't treated well as a child and we're bringing that with us. We sabotage our own efforts because we're scared of success. There's just so much going on, but to really, investigate what's going on with the whole person, I think is so paramount to really optimizing health.
Absolutely. And when I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, they have a whole chart of like 12 different things that includes your creativity. Do you cook at home? Do you have a good family life? Are your relationships good? All of those things are so important. Do you like what you do for a living? I mean, that is number one. And I think that we can get so caught up in other people's truths. My family's truth was that if I went to college, I would get a good job, and that's all that mattered. It didn't matter if I really enjoyed what I was doing. I wanted to write, but I was going to need a backup for that because that's not a real job. But yeah, like it was to go to work for someone else. And so I had to start questioning that because I got really sick, and I knew that my job was part of what was killing me because I did change all of my diet. I changed, how I exercised. I changed all the physical things, made sure I had the water and the sleep and the everything else, but something still wasn't right, So, and I realized that when I was going to work every morning crying, that might be, that might be the thing. But I mean, and sometimes it's fear, and sometimes we don't think we're worthy, whatever that is. And it's amazing how those things can really make us sick, because our thoughts can make us sick. If we're focused on all the terrible things that are going on in our life. And even when we're depressed, because I've been through that too, our thoughts are like a spiral down, and it affects our body. Our body doesn't know that, we're not being tortured. It just knows what it's thinking and which hormones are being triggered, and how to protect itself, So it's so important that we use we're looking at all of the person, and the women's organization that I'm on the board for, womenwithin.org, they break it into 4 major categories, and they call it by pies, which it makes it really easy to remember.
Tasty.
Yeah, so it's like physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. And you can fit everything all in there, but all of those areas need to be well taken care of, or our health does suffer. And I think it's what you were saying too about the river, and the poison being poured. It's just like that wound, right? And if all we do is take care of the symptoms that come up, we're never going to solve that problem, because the infection or the problem, the virus, whatever, it's still there, Exactly. And all we're doing is playing Bop-A-Mole. It's what happened with me and my stress. It came up with joint pain at first, and inflammation in my body. And then it came up with migraines, and then it came up with stomach problems. So it's a Bop-A-Mole unless you actually are fixing the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have a couple friends that are physicians, and a lot of them are sort of also keying into this idea of how important it is to treat the whole person, and also how important preventive care is, because they feel like they're just putting a Band-Aid on all these problems. Like they might fix them for the moment, but they're not really fixing them. Because, for example, if you're really stressed out and your stress is what's causing you pain, you have to reduce the stress. You have to treat the stress and the pain. And whatever else might be causing the stress. It's like, again, this sort of tangled web. And that's why having a real broad view of someone's life and say, how can we sort of optimize all of this? And then you can be really, truly healthy, But if you're just treating one aspect, you're never going to get to your best. And
right.
This is a real radical idea. I mean, it makes intuitive sense. A lot of people understand it, but I'm still shocked that people don't really realize it yet. Our medical system hasn't quite caught on, although there are a lot of people starting to catch on. One of the places I trained at was Duke's Integrative Medicine, and that's, they have this beautiful facility where they have yoga and meditation rooms and counseling rooms and traditional medical offices and music therapy and art therapy. They have all of this that sort of gets at the whole person, and it's really impressive. And I think more centers are going to pop up like that across the U.S., which will be fantastic.
That would be. And I often wonder if it's not because, like, of all the technology that we have, we're so overstimulated so much of the time and so disconnected from who we are.
Yes.
Because we're constantly connected into something else. And I mean, and that's a big part of how I describe, the cycle of shift is like the second stage right after something isn't right. It's about honing in and honoring yourself and really connecting to yourself and feeling what's in your body. What is going on? What kind of stress am I feeling? Or, what feelings am I feeling altogether? Whatever that is, that's going to clue you into how to get to your aha moment, really. So that was a great story. I appreciate that. That was a great aha. And I mean, again, I honor you because you did all that studying and then you were like, but it's everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different approach, but I think all the studying has really helped because,
sure.
As far as like, I understand the body physically, like I understand population health, and now I really want to focus on individuals because knowing all of that in the background has sort of strengthened my belief that it's important to study the whole individual and examine what's happening on every level. And the disconnection you're talking about is very, very real. Like one of the first things as health coaches, you do sometimes is just to ask someone what they want out of life. Like, what do you want your health to look like? Or what do you want your life to look like? And it's amazing how few people know how to answer that question. And that to me is just remarkable. Like we are so disconnected from who we are and what we want. And just, first step is just getting in touch with, hey, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I want out of my life. This is who I am. And then you sort of have a better idea of, how to get to that place.
Yeah, or even how to live your life every day. Have you read Danielle LaPorte's The Desire Map?
I don't think I've read that one, no.
She's pretty fabulous. And some people, they love her or hate her. It's one or the other. But she's pretty fabulous. She has this book, The Desire Map, and she talks about, we set these goals and we kind of in our mind know how we want to feel when we get there instead of saying, this is how I want to feel every day and doing things that make us feel that way every day. So if I want to feel abundant, maybe I give to charity or maybe I go purchase myself something small or, whatever it is like, but it's the choice. We have the choice to feel what we want to feel every day. And I mean, that is something that it took me an entire book of hers to read it and go, wow, I can choose how I want to feel.
Right.
Do things for me that actually, because I got so tied up in my tasks, here's the goal, here's all the things that I'm going to do to get there, and I'm going to do them, and then I'm going to be happy. Instead of going, well, I could be happy while I'm doing all these other things, or else we're living for that moment. And often we don't even celebrate that moment because by the time we get to that moment, we already have another goal and we're already, task warrior on that. So that was just interesting thought is The Desire Map is an awesome book. She talks about how we want to feel good now, and still get those goals done, but the goals become easier and they become more passionate when we're actually enjoying the journey.
That's right. You have to enjoy the journey. I mean, I think that's why mindfulness is so powerful too, because just connecting with yourself. And I know some people also talk about mind shift. Dan Siegel talks about that as sort of not only becoming aware of your emotions, but also like working to change them and to actually like change the structure of your brain. through that process, so you can, get hardwired differently.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's really fascinating, but yeah, I mean, nobody wants to wake up when they're 60 years old and say, how the hell did I get here? So making a conscious choice every day of how you want to live and where you want to go and who you want to be with is so important.
Right. And knowing your core, where's your North Star? What are you willing to, what are you willing to stand by ethically, morally? What is that spiritual connection? Whatever it is, I define that as like binding to your like moral fiber, not so much religious, but just knowing who you are at the core and standing by that. And I think sometimes we can get so wrapped up into other things, needing to pay the bills and needing money, or, needing more than the next person, whatever it is, we sometimes lose our compass.
Yes. Yeah. Especially with all the technology and everybody's so busy and distracted. And it's like people are just so overwhelmed. They're just drowning in everything else and not taking the time they need for themselves.
Absolutely. Or they think it's guilty because it's not serving. And I mean, that's probably one of the biggest lies that brought on my stress, that made me sick in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you can tell yourself that, but if you don't take care of you, nobody is.
I know, that's the whole thing. You have to take care of you. And particularly moms always say like their health is last, like they are last. And I'm a huge advocate that moms have to take care of themselves. Caretakers have to take care of themselves, because you can't take care of another person effectively if you're not in a good spot yourself. So self-care is so important.
And what are you modeling for your children? If you don't take care of you, you're just teaching them that when they get older, they are not supposed to take care of themselves. They're only supposed to take care of other people too. I mean, that's what I saw, when I was growing up, and that's what I assumed was the right thing to do when I got older.
Yeah, yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's move on to these questions.
Okay.
So one word to describe the situation when something wasn't right. I guess that would be for you before, like when you were studying, maybe? Is that when something wasn't right, when you started thinking like, wow, there's got to be more to health than this?
Yeah, I think it's not really one word, it's two, but missing link. Like I just felt like there was something missing.
Okay. And then one question you would ask somebody if they felt where you were at that point.
I guess, are you seeing the bigger picture?
That's a good one. And how did you handle, what were your challenges when you had this aha?
Well, I think, particularly like as I was going along in my life and my career, I was always hearing I had to focus down, focus down, focus down. And when you're trying to take a broad, holistic view of health, that's like the opposite of what they're telling you to do. So my biggest challenge was, how do I do what I feel like I'm meant to do, which is to, treat people and help people become healthier and better versions of themselves in this sort of framework of where I'm at, which in my case was sort of more of an academic sort of environment where that's actually sort of not what they wanted you to do. It's sort of like you've got to focus to become like that expert in this tiny little niche. And so that was like sort of a contradiction and a challenge for me.
Sure. Especially after you had done all that schooling and everything, and you're like, I don't want to be.
I know. Like, what do I do?
I'm curious. I want to learn.
I know. I'm an avid learner, so I keep learning, and I'm like, oh, and this matters, and this matters, and this matters. So.
You're one of those that has a dozen books around the house, aren't you?
I do. I'm always like, I have like a list of books around my bathtub and my nightstand where it's like, I want to read all of these books and know everything.
Yep. I'm like that too. Yeah. So what's one word to describe the shift for you?
I think it's empowering. I just feel now it's empowering to me as a person to know how to approach my own health and the health of, my children. And also for my career, feeling like there is a way to do this. Once I found coaching and health coaching and realizing that this was sort of the foundation of what coaching was about, it was great. I felt like, oh, here's a way, here's a path to do what I'm sort of meant to do.
Very nice. Are there any specific books or resources that you would recommend?
Yeah, there's this great book. Well, one was Dan Siegel's book on mind shift. Another great book is called Immunity to Change, and it's actually about like change is so hard because of all these ways we sabotage our own efforts. So that's great.
Down.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think as far as, Duke has this really great Wheel of Health, and their integrative medicine department does really good work if you're looking for a good like medical resource that sort of is a model for integrating different types of services in a more traditional medical setting. Yeah, there's so many. Those I'm just sort of thinking of offhand.
Cool. Very neat. What's one thing you wish to shift about yourself in the future?
Oh, that's a tough one. There's probably a lot. I'm big into self-improvement myself. So I think, like a lot of people, I struggle from being distracted and not being fully in the moment. Since I started my journey as a coach, I'm also a registered yoga instructor. And one of the things that's really stressed is mindfulness and really trying to be aware of the present moment because it slips away so fast and then it's gone. And so for me, I want to integrate that not only for my clients, but for myself as well, to really appreciate the present and again, get in touch with myself and what I'm feeling and what I need. So that's definitely something I want to do more of.
Yeah, that one's tough, staying mindful of the moment.
Yes.
I think even the experts will tell you that you can't do it 100% of the time. Like, I think the only person that might be able to do it is Eckhart Tolle.
I know. That's right. But it is really hard. I mean, it's amazing. Like when I first started meditating, we started in like 5-minute increments. And even for 5 minutes to just focus on your breath or to just not have, they call it the monkey mind, like all the thoughts in your head, to like sort of get that out and have a clear head. It's very hard. Now I love it because it's actually a mental break, where I can push aside everything, and they've shown, increases the gray matter of your brain and you think better and can be more focused, but it's a challenge for sure.
Yeah. I think even like decades back before I started trying to meditate or any of that stuff, I think the closest thing it came to before and the feeling it reminded me of, and this is so poisonous for your body, was when one summer I decided to go to a tanning salon just for a few weeks to get, a base tan. Back in the 90s, we were allowed to do this.
Yeah. I remember that time.
Yeah, it was like 20 minutes of warmth in the middle of winter with just low music going and a fan in the background. And it was like, I worked full time and I went to school full time at this time. And I loved going there just because it was 20 minutes where I couldn't do anything. And it was just blank mind, just listening to music. It was so beautiful.
Yeah.
But that's what it reminded me of the first time I was able to actually meditate, and it felt good.
Yeah.
It's a weird reference for me, but that's what it reminded me of the first time. I was like, wow, that's what this is like. Yeah. I can do this. What's one thing I'm sorry?
Without the UV rays.
Yeah. Well, I don't do that anymore, as you can tell, but it was years ago, what we didn't do when we were young, I guess.
Remember those days.
Many things I wouldn't let my kid do today, I'm sure. What's one thing you hope to do before you die? Bucket list.
Oh, I really want to write a book. So I really want to write a book about health and wellness that, really helps people live better lives. And it's something I've yet to do, and I'm working on trying to do, because it's very important to me to spread knowledge. And a book is one way you can really get deep into an issue in a way that you just can't in, you know, blog posts or short articles or, you know,
even coaching. I mean, you only get so much time. So even coaching, you only have so much time to get so much to your clients. So
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. I'm working on a book now.
Nice.
It seemed really easy when I started. I know. I'm on about chapter 5. I mean, and granted, there's only like 7 to 8 chapters in the book, but
hey, you're good then. That's really good.
Yeah, but it all needs to go back and be edited, and I need to add resources and some other stuff. I mean, there's a lot of work in a book. I published a journal last year.
Nice.
But the only reason I did that was for some of my coaching clients. I had a group going, and I wanted a cheap way to get them a lot of material. So I built this journal that actually anyone can use now. It's not just for the class, but that was my first experience. But then I loved it so much, and I still love it, because I love every week when I get that little, note, hey, you sold this many books this week. And I'm like, oh, I didn't do anything.
Awesome. Yeah. No, I mean, that's also another benefit of books. But yeah, I just find I like to go so deep into stuff that I think it would take me about 5 years, because I keep digging for more. It's the researcher in me. I just keep digging and digging, and I feel like it's a major task, and it would take forever. But I should set my sights on something a little smaller to begin with, like you're saying, like a journal or something smaller would be a great way to.
Just a good overview, maybe a short, overview of Health for Dummies or something, And you can always take each one of those chapters and develop a book or whatever from those, and get into your deep researcher.
I know. And without boring people, though, sometimes I start to write articles and I'm like, oh, because in a research type of articles, you just get so dense and reference, and shifting over to more popular press, because I write more for the popular press now, is a change, a wonderful change, though, not to have to reference every single thing I say. And
right.
But yeah, I mean, because consumers, like, people don't want that level of detail. They want, the distilled, like, tell me how it's going to help me, Yeah. It's the point.
And at the end, they don't want to have to go, so is that good or bad?
Right. You have to, yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. Cool. Yeah, writing a book is always a good one. I just like to know that I've learned something sometimes. So, and if I can help anybody else, that's really great. And having it in print means that I don't have to be there for every person, which is really nice, because, time.
Yeah, well, at some point, if you're trying to help a lot of people, you have to do something more public, whether it's speaking engagements or a book or something to really get the word out, because you only have so much time in the day. There's only so many people you can talk to.
Yeah, exactly. So what's one thing or person that's made or triggered a huge difference in your life?
Gosh, well, there's a lot of people.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of. So this isn't someone necessarily with health, but there's someone named Atul Gawande who's a really interesting writer who pieces together sort of things that don't always connect when you first read it. Like, for example, one of the things I read from him was like how the hospital system could learn from the Cheesecake Factory. And it's like that type of thing I love. And I follow people that do that, because I like, again, to see connection from things that seemingly are disconnected. But when you get to see connections between things, it's just like with health. Everything starts to make sense of how you can pull lessons from almost anything to just learn about, life in general. So that's just sort of an interesting person I follow, but I have lots.
That's very neat. No, I love connections too, because I do believe that everything's so interconnected. If I fix a truth about myself in my physical world, it also changes in my emotional world and in my intellectual world and my spiritual world. Like you can't tell a lie intellectually and it not affect you physically, emotionally, and spiritually as well. You know, there's just whatever we do in one section of our lives where it's going to affect the other areas.
Yes.
And that's why shift is such a cycle, because even when we learn the aha in one area of our life, if we don't look and prevent it, it'll just pop up in another area of our life. You know, like if we have stress and it starts hurting us physically, well, like me, I take the pills and I'm just like, no worries, I'll just, you know, fix this, I'll just bandage this wound, no problem.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it shows up emotionally because I get depressed, or spiritually because, you know, and that's for me a different type of depression where I'm just disconnected. So it shows up anywhere you go, and that's perfect. I'll have to look him up. The connections between the health industry and the Cheesecake Factory.
I know. I learned a lot. I was like, that's so interesting. But it made me think.
Yeah. It's interesting to have the way some people are creative enough to make you, because I love the visual of it. You know, that's what's so beautiful about it. I'm very visual.
Yes, me too.
Well, Amanda, that's all I had for you. You've been fantastic on this. I am going to thank you, and then I'm going to stop the recording, but you hang on, okay?
Okay, well, thank you. This is fun.
Yep. Good.